So a couple of things before we get started. I want to talk a little bit about prepping your paper. So you have this nice sheet of tone paper that you bought, and it has a front and a back. I want to show you that the back side has a sticker. Make sure you remove this, because if you try to draw over the sticker, you'll get a little sort of a ghost impression of that shape. So make sure you take that off. The other way you could tell is typically there's kind of a watermark along one of the edges or something. This one's Canson, and you'll see it, and it should read correctly if it's the front side. Now, the reason there's a front and a back side, this is kind of an interesting fact, is there's sort of some texture on here. And that texture is actually to help you draw. So when you're scumbling and kind of dragging your charcoals over the surface, these little pock marks, these little holes, don't necessarily all get filled up with charcoal. And that is a great way to allow you to have the color of your paper always come through your charcoal, like we talked about in the first video. You know, you don't necessarily want to totally obliterate the color of the paper and completely fill it in. So that can help you. However, if you're good at controlling your marks and you're going to use like cross hatching, some people do use the back, which has a bit of a smoother texture. So you're welcome to use either or. I think it would be wise probably just to try the front. Now for this, I went ahead and got some tape. I'm just going to very lightly tap it down around my border. I went ahead and pre-drew those. And remember, don't leave this tape on for very long. Just leave it on for the time that you're drawing. If you have to get up and stop this drawing and come back to it later, that's fine. Just take off the tape and you can put some more on later. But I do recommend the tape because it does help make that nice crisp edge around your borders when you're making this. Makes it look a lot more professional. Another neat trick, if you do have a drawing board, you'll notice these pre-bought pieces of paper are too big to fit. Even if you put them underneath here, they hang over the edge just a little bit. So what I do is I put the bottom down here on these clips. And then when I set it up on my easel or on my chair, I just put it upside down. You're not going to be drawing up here anyways, so it's okay that it kind of stands over. That saves you from having to cut it. It's just a nice trick. And then lastly, if you're going to do the paper bag, which probably most of you should, you know, you can see there's quite a bit of value and wrinkles just by opening it up. However, you want to give it a little bit more character, I recommend just kind of giving it one medium squish. Not too much, because if you do it too much, it starts to get a little overwhelming with the amount of wrinkles. And then what I like to do is, I don't know, grab something like a rock or a couple of coins, drop them in there, and that helps hold it in place. That way, if you know your roommate comes home and opens the door, this thing's not going to go flying. And you'll notice this one's kind of popping a wheelie a little bit. That corner's up off there. That's perfect. That gives you something to draw. You can show that when you're drawing, how the shadow goes underneath there. It just adds a little bit of character and keeps it from moving around too much. And lastly, normally, I should say, during a lot of my value drawings, I typically like my light to come a little bit from behind. And I find that's better because you get more interesting values up here. You get these more complex values in the shadow side. But for the bag, it's a little bit better to have it more in the front and from the side. And the reason that is because this is semi-transparent. It's a little bit see-through. And if you have light coming through it, I don't know if you can see this. I don't know what my camera can see right here, but you notice how it has a glow coming through? That's not going to really help you. It's going to make a confusing value for you. So I recommend making your light come a little bit more from the front. Not so much that it's all bleached out, but just enough, you know, so you have some nice highlights and some shadows. So here we have the bag, and I just wanted to show it to you really fast before I start drawing because I can't show both at the same time. But again, notice that I have complete control of the lighting in my room with these value drawings. That's always really important, and it's an important step to take. So I like to have a white sheet and maybe something dark black behind it. It just gives me good value range. Okay, students, so first things I want to do, of course, probably use my siding tool. It's not probably going to be exact proportions to this, but it's so close it won't really matter. Rather than making a new one just for this one sheet of paper. I'm going to hold it up, get an idea how I want it to be placed on the page, what looks the best. You know, this is really a good tool to figure that out and where you want it to be. So what I have here is just a very light but my wooden charcoal pencils, the HB. I'm going to press really lightly to give myself just sort of a gestural placement of where the bag is. And then I'll go back and check proportions and stuff like that. Sort of the placement of the table and direction of the shadow. It's kind of an angle like that. Okay. You could use black. Some people like to use white. White would be good too. Make sure you have this pencil on hand because we are going to use that. In fact, you should have all your charcoal media available just in case. Though mostly I think I'm going to recommend using these because based off of our last assignment where we did the more careful cross hatching and basically, and also because like of how messy all the other charcoal methods have been, you'll find that this is a much more neat and sort of exacting way of using charcoal. And charcoal is always better in the sense that it gives us the better value range. It gets much darker. And well, and we also have the privilege of having white too, which is nice. So we have white and black for this tone paper. Okay, so at this point, I just want to show you a few things that I did right off the bat to get started. I think it's smart to do these things. First, identify the brightest spots on your bag, okay? As well as the darkest spots that you see, meaning like maybe the core of the shadow, right here where the bag meets the table, or maybe a couple spots over here in this more shaded area on the left-hand side. And bring those up immediately, kind of to the level that you think they're gonna need to be to. You can adjust them a little bit later, but for the most part, just kind of bring those things out first. Next, what I like to do is hit some of the table. Put some of the white that you know needs to be there. In fact, I could probably suggest, I could probably put a lot more white because I know this white sheet where the light is hitting really is going to be catching a lot of the light. So I'm going to spend a lot of time filling this up. But the reason I need to get this to the right value, because so many of the decisions that I'm going to make in this bag are based on how I approach the background. If you waited to the very end of this drawing, so say you did all this work on the bag itself, and then right at the end decided, oh, I'm going to throw some dark background back here, that you'll sabotage yourself. You'll screw it up because the relative value of this will change greatly based on the darkness that you put back here. Or maybe you'll decide not to put anything back here. Maybe you'll just build the values up really dark on this and leave this blank. But whatever you're gonna do, kind of make that decision early on and put a little bit of it, at least some of it down as a reference right off the bat so you can see how this bag starts to come forward and you can make all your smart decisions about values in here based on these values as well. Okay, so I also am right-handed, so I like to put a little bit here on the left-hand side mostly. That way I'm not dragging my hand through it. And I'll just keep building up this tabletop for a while until I'm happy with the value this is. In fact, I'm not gonna even touch this shadow until I'm pretty certain that I have this tabletop to the lightness that I want it to be. Okay. Now to make my marks, a lot of what I'm doing is just, got a little erasing to do, is just very careful hatches that go across the shape of the form. And that way I can build them up slowly and carefully. Over here on the folds, don't outline the shapes that you see and then try to color them in, because what you'll get is basically shapes on a bag that look outlined, and you'll get something that looks more like a pattern, like cheetah marks or something. Instead, take your pencil, for example, the white here on the side where I'm trying to make light, and on this fold here that I'm really seeing that's popping out, I'm doing hatches perpendicular to the shape. In other words, the shape's long this way. I'm trying to run my shapes, my marks across it. It helps pop it out. And I think you can see already, just in these first few minutes of kind of building this up, how much this bag is already coming out. Now, of course, you know, I'd be spending a lot more time really concentrating on building up some of these areas. This is gonna need to get darker over here. I'm gonna have to find more shapes in here, put more wrinkles in. Paying attention to the different values very carefully. But it slowly starts taking shape. And it's really not as hard as it looks. Like once you get started and once you kind of get these three major values down, like you sort of have your dark, light, medium, you just look at those shapes and respond to them the best you can, and I promise you it'll look cool. It'll look like a bag. This edge right here is supposed to be really bright, so I'm gonna try to bring that. It's catching the light and really showing the difference between the light hitting this edge and the part back here in shadow. Okay, I don't think I'm gonna take this all the way to the finish because that might take too long. I'm not gonna sit here and do a 6-hour drawing just for a demo. I think there's enough information here for you to know how to start and just spend your time working on it. Okay, excellent.